Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Celtic Rumours TV, the Bawz and Bovril podcast with your host Mark and myself Paul and our guest tonight Michael. On today's show we will look at the latest rumours and gossip around Celtic. We'll have a brief chat about the weekend's defeat to Rangers. Mark and Michael will give their views on the referee standards in Scotland after Callum being sent off at the weekend. We will talk about the financial situation at Celtic after the impact of COVID-19 this season. Is Peter Lawell really staying at the club as a consultant to Dominic McKay? Michael and Mark will also talk about the rebuild and is it already starting? And lastly, is there a lawsuit coming on the hands of Celtic by former player and now pundit Andy Walker? And we will talk about Chad Nicholas' thoughts on Scott Brown. Firstly, before I hand off to Mark, I'd like to wish him a happy birthday. And without you, none of this podcast would be happening. So for myself, Mark, a very happy birthday to yourself. Over to you for shout outs.
Much, Paul. You work as hard as I do doing this. I don't say it's all because of me, mate. Evening. How are you anyway, Paul?
Good.
Back at work now?
Back at work, and I kind of recovered after the weekend anyway. That's
Who the chat tonight? Terence in. Evening, Terence. Bobby Sutherland. Glasgow Green's in as well. Evening, lads. Just sound still okay, aye? Well, they were shout outs. Just the usual shout outs to Tim Alloy and Malika. Don't think he's ever got a date yet that he can get home to see his family, but hopefully it'll be soon. And ROH, who's recovering from his operation, so get well soon there, ROH. Young Ben, he's doing quite well. I was talking to Steph last night. He says he's working really hard and he's determined that he'll be back on his feet faster than the doctors think. So that's good for him. Keep up, Ben, you'll get there, wee man. And just to thank everybody on the forum and that for the birthday wishes yesterday. Thanks very much. I really appreciate it. Hail, hail.
Perfect. So now we'll move on to Celtic rumours and gossip. Kevin Phillips has said that Ejan Shaqiri should consider a move to Celtic to resurrect his career, and that Celtic should consider making a loan offer for the player at the end of the season. Ryan Christie has told Celtic that he won't sign a new contract and wants to leave with immediate effect once the transfer window starts open, with Norwich and Burnley both interested. Christoph Foy is another player that sees his career away from Celtic and would prefer a move to Newcastle. It rumours that Newcastle had scouts at Ibrox at the weekend and valued the player at a cut price of $8 million. Nextly, John Kenny has reported that the Celtic board are trying to persuade Olivier Ntcham to sign a new contract and would see him as a key player for the incoming manager. Lee Griffiths looks like set to be handed a Celtic lifeline by the board, telling him at the weekend that the next manager will consider his contract. Firstly, Mac, we'll start with Shaqiri. If there was an approach for Shaqiri by Celtic, would that be someone who you would look at, or is he out of Celtic's radar with the wages and stuff like that?
I think his wages he's in about 80 grand a week, I think, Paul. Take a drastic.
We'd have to get kind of Liverpool to take some of the wage as well, wouldn't we? You know, we couldn't expect to be paying that kind of money.
I mean, what's the contract situation at Liverpool?
I think he's another year or two left in this, so it'll be a loan offer because he wants to go on loan. He said he wants to leave, that he's not playing regular than he thought, and he said he's not enjoying football at the moment. You know?
Yeah, I would definitely take him on loan. No doubt about it. He's a quality player, but I just can't really see it happening. I think there'd be a lot, I'm not saying bigger teams, more well-off teams that would be able to pay a lot higher percentages wages than us would be interested in him.
Interesting to hear the news about Olivier Ntcham and the board trying to convince him to stay on for another season or two to sign a new contract, as they see him as a key player for the income man. Do you think maybe the income manager has approached the board about Olivier Ntcham, Mark, seeing as this gossip came up?
It must be something like that. or it is just made up gossip. If there's any truth in it, it must be whoever's coming in as manager.
Managers.
And I mean, Encham, he did, at times he looked a really good player for us, and other times he didn't seem interested. But
But
it happened under Rodgers, so you can't even say, oh, maybe he fell out with Lennon, that's why he was so bad this year or that. But I wouldn't really
he's not
think I'd want Encham back.
he's not too consistent enough, Mark, to be considered like, one or two. And he never seems to show up in big games. I know he scored a goal for us in Europe last season and stuff like that, but he's never showed up in big games really when we played him. So, he seems to be kind of jumping out of tackles, or he's not passing the ball right. He's not the player what we thought he would be and what he was able to become.
No, it is just consistency with him. I can
Mm-hmm.
see that we could, the way he performed this season when he was here and that, we could say that about umpteen players, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is a good player in Encham if he's head, somebody in the live chat, William there says if he gets his head sorted, if he gets his head in the right place with the right manager, he would be a good player. But it's a
But you think
strange one that the board's thinking.
do you think it's all like that's maybe Celtic haven't been competing properly in Europe, Mark, that he's getting frustrated like this, like that he wants to be playing in the Champions League's group stage. Maybe that's why he signed for us back then, that he was taught he'd play in the Champions League's group stages. And since he's kind of been here, really, only Brendan Rodgers' time, Celtic have failed to qualify for these Champions League group stages. Do you think that's maybe?
He's got to shoulder some of the responsibility for us not qualifying for them.
Mm-hmm.
All the players that have failed to do it have got to shoulder some of the responsibility. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like, see, players shouldn't come out with nonsense like that. It's like, see, when players say they want to move to a Champions League club, they're not talking
Mm-hmm.
about moving to a club in the Champions League. Because see, if they were, come to Celtic then for 30, 40 grand a week.
Exactly.
They're
Exactly.
they're talking about they want to move to a club that pays Champions League wages. That's what they
Yeah.
mean when they come out with
That's
talk. It's nothing to do with
exactly.
football.
Exactly. No, we thought maybe Lee Griffiths being overlooked on the weekend by John Kennedy, that his career was finished at Celtic, but supposedly he was told after the game on early Monday morning that the new manager will be deciding on his future. It's a strange one because I can't see the point in Kennedy bringing on Mickey Johnson at the weekend when we had a striker of Lee Griffiths' quality on the bench. It's hard to see where the board are coming with this one. Are they going away with the new manager to make a decision, or do you think Markey has been told by being overlooked at the weekend?
Again, it's like the Encham thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's Encham and Lee Griffiths, two stories coming out that the board are wanting to keep them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I wouldn't like to think the board's making football decisions, Paul. We've been through that a million times. You know what I mean? It should be
Exactly.
people, but with things like that happening, you've got to think again: is the new manager working in the background?
Exactly. That kind of seems to be it. Like that, there's already a manager in place, and he's actually telling the board about his decisions. Maybe he knows what players are leaving and what players are contracts are up, and maybe Lee Griffiths is actually one of them. Our first guest tonight is going to be Michael. That's Michael Dundee from the forum. And for new subscribers to the podcast and who don't know what the Celtic forum is, it's a Celtic transfer banter page that's on the web. It's celticrumourstv.co.uk, where we have numerous of Celtic supporters who give their opinions about Celtic. If you have time, look it up, as there's very interesting topics that fans of Celtics discuss. Can we get Michael on the line?
Should be there. You there, Michael?
Michael, you there?
Hello.
Oh, there he is.
Michael, welcome back to the show, Michael. How are you recovered after the weekend, or has it slowly started to die away?
I was recovered not long after it because it was what I expected to happen
Yeah.
anyway. What about
Yeah.
you, Mark? Have you recovered from your birthday yet?
I had a bit of sugar overload, Michael, but I'm getting there today.
You know, Michael,
Like he says, you've got one day a year to enjoy all that cake, eh?
No.
Michael, just going by the gossip coming out of Celtic, what's your review that like the Celtic board are trying to persuade, if it's true, Olivier Champ to stay on next season for the sign a new contract?
Again, it's just ridiculous that. Again, it's not what Mark echoed. Why would it be up to the board who to keep? It's up to the manager coming in. If it is Eddie Howe that's coming in, or whoever it is, if they want to keep Olivier and Cham, that's worrying to me in the first place after what he did. Like, he's one of the players that are down tools at the start of the season to try and force through a move. Why would you offer somebody like that a new deal?
It is. It's like offer a player a new deal like that has really done tool for us, and he was kind of part of this group of players that didn't want to be here, really, isn't it?
Corey, maybe what we see is a big problem at the start of the season, isn't it? He was stuck in the middle of it all. I just think it's bizarre all round. Even if as I saying, even if it is Eddie Howe, why would you want a player like that in your team? It's going to down tools and spit the dummy out to that kind of degree just when they're not getting their own way.
Just briefly on the match, because I know we spoke to Michael after it on Sunday. Is there anything you would have changed looking back in the match that you thought Kennedy would do, Mark? You know, I know we spoke about Zora coming in, but is there anything else you think he should have done in that game?
I see it was say it all the time. Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
We
all agreed before the game on Sunday that was probably not the team we expected. That we would have chosen, if that's what we expected John Kennedy to pick, it probably was our strongest team. Apart from maybe, as we've said, Brown, that would have been the only change I'd have made, and we said that but before it. I was happy that he changed Laxalt over for Taylor. Apart from that, the only thing I would have changed is Brown for Sorrow. But the red card, that messed up, didn't really mess the full team up, kind of thing.
And what's your thoughts on the apology that came out kind of early Monday by Scott Brown, Michael, that he apologised for this season, the way Celtic fell this season? Do you think it's a bit little too late?
I don't know. I just look through comments like that. I'm not interested.
And
that, like he says, and if other fans are going to take that rubbish on board, then more fool them. I mean, going back onto Kennedy, I'm still trying to get over Mikey Johnson coming on for Edward. That was one of the decisions made in that game. What Mark said, that was near enough our strongest team that we could have picked other than Brown.
But it's strange, like, because like Mickey Johnson, like Mark, like he only came back from injury. He has played few games, and like Griffiths being overlooked, like it is a strange one, like really, isn't it? That substitution, isn't it, Mark?
Well, we said it,
you know,
it was with two strikers on the bench and Griffiths and Ayeti, and yet he put a winner on to play up front. Was Griffiths, what's their fitness levels? Were they only fit enough to make up, we said it, to sit there and make up the numbers? Were they never going on?
Exactly. Look, I think we spoke about the match in depth on Sunday, so I'll push on just away from that. So firstly, I want to bring this up again because there's a few people talking on the forum about the standards of referees. So the reason we're talking about this is because the second yellow card issue with Scott Brown at the weekend. Some people are saying that according to the rules, Callum McGregor, that because the referee played on and that second yellow shouldn't have been issued to Callum Mack, and according to the rules of the game, that if the play isn't stopped or if he wasn't interfering with play and he stopped the goal being scored, he shouldn't have been. What's your judgment on that, Mark?
Well, I never gave it any thought at all. I seen about it on the forum, and United Ireland, John, that was meant to come on and talk about this, he seemed to be right in about it, and he'd put up links to the rule, and it does seem to be right that he shouldn't have been sent off. And I'm not saying changed the game or anything like that, but the referees, it was down to the referees should know the rules of the game. To me, that's a basic rule of the game. especially if it's something that's only been changed recently. Because when you're a referee, I'm sure when they do all these changes, you go in courses so that it's drilled into you what the new rules are and that.
But Michael, is that down to maybe the lack of training or the lack of investment by the Scottish FA for the Scottish referees, or is it just blatant anti-Celtic and pro-Rangers in the league?
It's definitely
Michael?
not anti. It's definitely not anti-Celtic. I think it's just anti-quality. Like he says, you heard what Jonas said when he was on.
That's what I was just going to say.
The guy struggles to referee United against Livingston. So how's he going to manage Celtic against Rangers?
Like, do referees in Scotland, Mark, not realise the magnitude of these Celtic and Rangers games, and are they too quick to make these decisions? Like, we've seen the same with Beaton there in the last few games, and like when you clearly look at the camera, Beaton wasn't the last man, and Morales wasn't in a scoring area, and it was a straight red card. Like, you know, are they too quick, these referees, in showing red cards?
It's just incompetence across the board with the referees in Scotland. They're just every referee in Scotland isn't up to the job. There isn't one referee that you would say. Can you imagine the uproar if we sent a referee to referee some big like PSG v Real Madrid kind of game? Just total incompetence. The referees are. I don't even know how you could make them any better. People say make them full time. That's not going to make any difference to me. It's just the actual standard the refereeing in Scotland is at rock bottom. They're just too many.
Sorry, Mark,
too many of them want to be all about them. They want to be the centre of attention in that as well. It's need a gut out the full refereeing system. Not just really in Scotland, because England's just as bad.
Just going by the standards, so Michael, like how, and we came to light with after the game. Did John Kennedy and the Celtic backroom staff, were they not aware of this rule that was inside the game? Like, and how can they then question this decision by the referee during the game? You know, do you think they weren't informed of this rule, or?
See, I didn't think much at the time, to be honest, and even going on about it now, it's not. I'm not bothered about it. I just think it's just a smokescreen over how bad the performance was.
I think if Celtic had come out and said anything about it, I think it would have been just it would have been just looked at as a case of sour grapes.
Yeah. It was obviously it looks like it was a mistake, but some of the guys on the forum will not probably know that, but I remember referees back in the day like John Rowbottom and that, and they got a bad stick in that. But I actually think that referees have got progressively worse over the years.
I'd take John Rowbottom back now.
But is that down to the Scottish FA, Mark? Like, that the referees are gotten so bad? Like, is it lack of training from the Scottish FA, like not sending these players abroad to get proper experience on the UEFA? Or
that's part of it, but the part of it's got to be as well that they don't get punished for making their mistakes, or very rarely get punished for making basic mistakes. You're a referee, see, like the fact, right, we're just saying for McGregor, right, and I'm no heart moan about it, like Michael says, because the game's been and gone. I'm just using that as another example of incompetent referees. If that, there I've lost my train of thought now. Right, if that had been picked, if that rule is what the rule is now, then that referee should be pulled up by the SFA for that and asked why you did. He should be asked to explain that. And see if he turned around and says, "Oh, I didn't know that was the rules," he should be demoted for 6 months. Do you know what I mean? Down to refereeing the championship or something like that. If he's refereeing one of the biggest games in the Scottish calendar and he doesn't know the basic rules of the game, he should be in charge of it.
The only thing more protected than referees in Scotland are the goalkeepers. It's unbelievable. Like, see the decisions that they get away with making, and they just never get held accountable for anything. This is the problem. There's no punishment. If a player gets sent off for that, they get a 3-game ban, a straight red, or a 1-game ban if it's 2 yellows. What happens to the referees? Like it says, when they hear like numerous bad games, or they get demoted to do another game. They're still refereeing another game of football to make more bad decisions.
Like, so here's a thought, like that's something that's popped up in the forum, that should the Scottish FA hire a retired referee who's refed in Champions League level and refed in World Cup finals, a person who would have been highly regarded in the game by FIFA. Right? His rule would be to review all Celtic and Rangers matches firstly, and then games, especially local derbies between Hearts, Hibernian, Dundee United, and report back to the Scottish FA about the failings of referees in Scottish football.
But
Should something like that
I
come?
don't think
they're
so.
not
I think that's
doing that. It was Hugh Dallas's job. He was the head of the referees. So there is people there. I don't know, examining what's the word, scouting the whatever you call it, the referees' performances. The SFA will be well aware of the mistakes in that they're making. It's just nothing seems to be done about it.
a lot of people are saying that a lot of this will change when VAR comes in. Has anybody actually watched any games in England this season regarding VAR?
But that's the thing, Mikey. English don't use VAR the way it was meant to be used. And
They scrutinise every decision now, even like to the mill.
even FIFA have got a problem with the way England are running their VAR, because it's meant to be for the referee to go and have another look at it and decide.
Yeah, it seems to be about 3 or 4 of them.
Aye, this other faceless panel that are just making the decisions.
Exactly, like the referees in England, Mark.
Aye, because then all you're doing is, instead of moaning about the referee making a mistake or getting something wrong, you're moaning, and especially in Scotland, it's going to be, who's making the decisions sitting up in the VAR room?
That's it.
Yeah,
Like, and the
exactly,
referee seems to be going with the positions, whoever's up in the room. Denmark and England, don't they? They seem to be. No one seems to be kind of changing the rule. Yeah, no one seems to be overruling. Like going back to 2010 when the referees went in strike and we had referees from Luxembourg. Like, should this something that maybe UEFA should consider? Like in maybe once a month, Scottish referees go off to a different league, and maybe referees from Luxembourg come off to ref a Scottish match, maybe just for one weekend. Like, to have different kind of referees' view of games, Mark, because that's something they should. I know you're in favour of foreign referees coming in, Mark, and stuff like that, but I don't think that would happen. But
just before Mark speaks on it, me and Jonas were talking about this as well, because he's passionate about this as well. I'd love to see a rotation of referees throughout the European leagues.
I've said the same.
I would love that. Like, I would love that. It'd be great. Like, yeah, and that's what I mean. You're getting a view from all referees, no just you can go there for a few weeks and then come back and tell us what you think. Just a rotation. Not even like Scottish referees and English referees, just European referees.
Yep. European referees move about, and you'll be able to see how different cultures of the game and stuff like that actually do stuff. You are going to learn from different games, Mark, aren't you? If it's rare for consider something like that,
Definitely, you'd learn. You'd learn just the different way, even down to the wee sneaky tactics and diving and things like that. You'd pick up even more things about actual how people cheat the more you go about and watch football.
But like going by referees in Scotland, and like their tweets about fucking Tory parties and stuff like that. Like, should they be left do that, considering their referees, Mark? Show their support to basically the club that they follow, kind of a thing. Like, they're not naming the club, but they're showing their clubs who they follow. Basically, like, should they be left do that?
I don't think it should, no. I think maybe something like that would be one of the pluses of having full-time referees. They wouldn't be allowed to. It's weird, isn't it, that political leaders running the line at football matches? It really is. I can't think of any other country that...
I don't think so. That political leaders and parties, Michael, of the Tories and stuff like that, being able to... And, it's not just one. Like, you could have a referee and you could have two linesmen part of this political group, like managing a Celtic game, straight away you're at a disadvantage, no matter who it is. Like, it could be Dundee or anyone. Like, you're at a disadvantage, really.
Politics should never be involved in football. It's as simple as that. And the fact that you've got that Douglas Ross or whatever his name is running the flag, and that I remember that game. That was the game that we were on about the other day when Edouard scored to make it 3-2 when we had 10 men. And it was when Simunovic elbowed Morelos, and it was a red, but it was just like when it was announced that he was part of that party and everything, and that it's just
But
It just doesn't sit. It just doesn't sit well, eh?
it's not meant to be the linesman's job to tell the referee to send somebody off either.
Oh, you seen the replays? Was he was shouting it? Was he
Uh,
red, 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 red?
That's not
I thought he was singing a UB40 song.
job. So his job's to tell him what he saw, and then it's the referee that's to decide if it was a red card offence or no. He shouldn't.
But like, do you think, Mark, because the reason Rangers have been getting away with this, especially this season, is because they've came out and they kind of named and shamed referees live on TV, or Celtic too quiet towards Scottish FA about referees? Are the Celtic board too quiet on this situation?
I think they're quiet, but I think there's a reason for it as well, because they don't want to look as if they're, I don't know, being petty. Do you know what I mean? It would be all the Celtic moaning again about referees, but there should be Celtic should be in contact with SFA in private. I spoke the other night about the Hamilton Accies manager. He says he's tried to get through to talk to the head of the referees and that, and they just never phone him back because he's for Hamilton. So Celtic should be on the phone about this stuff. Not just Celtic, every team. Not on the phone and complain about every referee that Rangers get. I'm talking about if you're a manager at Dundee United and you're not happy about the referee's performance, come out and say it and take it up with the SFA. But half the time it would be the manager that gets into trouble.
How do you think there'll be any changes, Michael, or are we expecting more of the same, because like teams haven't been voicing their frustration against the referees more often?
I think, like you say, I think a lot of people in Scotland think it's just us that has got bad referees. If you go and ask anybody in any league, everybody doesn't like their own referees. And I just think, like you say, what me and Mark were saying, a rotation of referees around Europe, if they were all full time, that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer move, is it? Surely.
Exactly, Mark. That's the thing that maybe UEFA should actually consider, because for first time ever they started moving the European Championships around to all these different countries, but because the COVID pandemic is being reduced, sure they could think outside the box and do this to improve not just the Scottish game but improve the game as a whole by giving these referees experience in different leagues,
It would see as well. It would do away with a lot of the accusations of the bias. Because if your referee's coming from Luxembourg or Belgium or Holland or something like that, you're not going to accuse him. No, I mean, he must be a Rangers supporter. Do you get what I mean? You're not going to come out.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. So,
a lot of the accusations of bias, and then you'd probably trust the foreign referees a lot more. I mean, if you're playing in Europe, Europa League or Champions League, whatever, and a player gets sent off, we never question what school the referee went to. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. You can nearly judge a game now, Michael, between Celtic and Rangers by learning who the referee was the week before, can't you? You can actually judge what way the game is going to go, can't you?
Yeah, like says, a lot of people have said a lot about Bobby Madden, but the starting next thing. But I think he's the best referee we've got in Scotland by a long way. I can't remember him having any bad matches against when Celtic played Rangers. I mean, there's loads of times where he's get penalties and sent players of them off and that. But I go back to a game, and I just needed to Google it. I needed to remember when Celtic played Stuttgart, when we beat them 3-1, when Karani. And I remember the referee that day because I actually managed to get a picture of him. And anybody remember that Pierluigi Collina? The scary referee? Try and find it and put it on the forum. I managed to, it was with my dad that day, and I managed to get a picture took one. And I remember watching him in that game and the respect that he had from everybody and the way that he refereed that match. Nobody talked back to him, nothing. Like he says, what a referee that guy was. And that's what I mean. This is what you want. You just want referees to get firm and fair referees. I just think the Scottish referees, I think they've got a thing going for them. I mean, the way that referee on Sunday was swanning about the pitch, you would think that he was somebody like Collina. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it.
Caught up he did kind of get caught up in a bit of that. Well, there wasn't much atmosphere, but the occasion kind of thing.
Yeah, and like he says, and what Jonas says, card happy. I mean, once the one of the yellows came out, that was it, was it?
That's it. Like once the yellow comes out, you're nearly kind of guaranteed, like with the stands in Scottish football, Mark, that player is more than likely going to be kind of sent off, like, isn't he? You know. So I think I leave it there for the referees. Look, we know it's a serious issue within the Scottish game, not just in the local derby between Celtic and Rangers. It's also an issue between Dundee and Dundee United when we spoke to Jonas. So moving on, I just want to talk about Peter Lawell, and it's come out on numerous media sites that Peter Lawell is expected to stay at Celtic as a consultant to Dominic McKay. Peter Lawell is supposedly staying at, and he will advise Dominic McKay on key transfer targets, on spending, and more of the financial side of it, Mark. What do you think of that?
Oh, God, devastated, Paul. Totally devastated. I can't believe it if it's true. That's craziness, absolute craziness. Because Peter,
Well, if that's the case, then I mean, if that's the case, then you're just looking at Dominic Mackay coming in and being a puppet, are you? Because there's much chance as Peter as Mackay making any decisions his own if he's hanging about anywhere.
Because I thought, Mark, the reason Dominic McKay was coming in so early was that he would learn to get the grips of the ropes before the new manager comes in, and then he can be his own man. But it's actually not looking like that. It's the rumours are strong. Like, a few people have come out. The likes of Packy Bon has come out, like, and he's questioned, like, why is this? Like, you know what I mean? Why is he staying on? Like, why is he going to still have control over the Celtic finances? You know, like, what is the point of hiring Dominic McKay? You know, if Peter Lawell is going to be a consultant to him, like, you know, we don't know how long he's going. Maybe just till the end of this season he might stay in as a consultant. But if he's going to stay as a consultant, like, you have to fear for the Celtic rebuild. If Lawell is going to be giving Dominic McKay advice, Mark, wouldn't you?
oh, I would certainly be worried about it. As I said, it's right. We're saying it's a consultancy position, but the bit that's saying it, he'll be helping him along with transfer targets and that. That's the worrying bit. See if it was just going to be sitting there, because let's face it, Dominic McKay coming from a rugby background and running Celtic day to day is a massive job, and probably entails things that we don't have a clue that Peter Lawell does every day. So maybe take him time to find out all these things that as part of his job and what he needs to do and how to do it the right way. But for him to think that Law's going to stay on the decisions, that's just, as Mikey says, it just makes him Mackay look like a puppet.
But Michael, going by that, like, so, like, if he is staying on, and because he's been involved in all mostly Celtic's transfers and signing players, like, is there a fear that maybe Celtic aren't going to sign in a director of football, and that Peter Lawell is going to be advising McKay instead of a director of football? Do you think that could be a way Celtic are going?
I don't know where these stories are coming from, but I don't think that Dominic Mackay, based on what I've heard about him, would accept the role knowing that Peter Lawell would be anyway involved in the future of the club. I don't think so.
Because my only...
You say that, Mikey, that surely that would have been spoke about.
Yes, definitely.
Took the job, if there was even
the same as
happening.
Same as anybody when they go for a high calibre job. You need to know all the details before you accept it.
My only fear, Mark, we say if he did stay, like, and we say Eddie Howe wanted, if he was the manager, and he wanted to sign Ferguson, and Lawell advised Doc McKay not to pay this price for him, that it'll go back to the same situation as Brendan Rodgers when he wanted to sign McGinn, and that was basically the last straw for Brendan Rodgers, that he wasn't getting these targets. Like, we could be going down the same road again with a new manager not getting the players he wanted and getting second best players if Lawell was there to say.
It's still at the club. There's really nothing, for me, nothing will change. Nothing will really change. Because,
you know,
I've said it before, you can Peter Lawell got a big ego, right? I'm not saying he's arrogant, but when he walks into, he knows his own worth, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? He's comfortable talking to all these big European guys that own Juventus and things like that. He's comfortable in any situation when it comes to like the boardroom side of things and all that. And Peter Lawwell's not going to sit there and no try to influence things, and if he can.
But sure, like if he wants to stay, like sure, like the Celtic fans maybe should be on Dermot Desmond's back then, Michael, for letting Peter Lawwell stay. Like, you know, that they should be like they're ringing for change, and if he is staying, like this change that we're expecting isn't going to happen if Lawwell is still in the club. You know.
Like he says. I mean, all the stories that are coming out just now, where it's transfers and this, I'm taking everything with a pinch of salt just now. Like he says, until the manager's appointed or director of football's appointment, that's when I'll start taking stuff on board. And until that happens, then I mean, there's no chance that Lawwell's going to be involved. I mean, like I said, for the first wee while to get the guy maybe used to certain things in that, like, but no chance that Dominic Mackay's going to be taken. Like, I hope I'm wrong anyway.
What about Lawwell becoming the chairman? What if that happens? Banker retires and get Lawwell as chairman.
But Mark, he was. We spoke in previous podcast that he was supposed to be involved in discussions with a new manager. Like, so, like, if he's involved with that and he's supposed to be leaving, like, could he actually be staying if he's involved in the new manager negotiations?
No, I was surprised he was involved in the manager talks, but when I think that I wasn't, maybe for the same reason, he knows the club inside out. He knows, and even with Dominic coming in, Peter Lawwell knows what Celtic's financial situation is going to be roughly for the next 2 or 3 years. Just, I mean, so how could, so he's maybe been that kind of way, look, we can't give you 30 million every season. Get what I mean? We can only give you this, that I'm letting you what it's going to be like for the next 2 or 3 years at Celtic. I told him it's just kind of that way he's been involved in. To get what I mean, setting out what the future of the club is as a whole. Easier without even getting into the footballing side, it just how healthy the club is and that kind of idea and what the club will pay for him, for a house, for cars, stuff like that.
Zach, so look, hopefully these, as Michael said, like, we should take these rumours with a pinch of salt, but hopefully there's no truth, and Dominic Mackay does become his own man, and he's able to make his own decisions, Mark. So moving on from that, I'm just going to talk about the financial situation for Celtic after the COVID virus pandemic. So financial football expert David Lowe has said that Scottish Football Club is currently up for sale, as Celtic look set to become the only club in Scottish football immune from the COVID-19 due to a billionaire cornerstone. Lawrence expert, American businessman, said that the Americans are sniffing around Scottish football clubs due to the fact that clubs are now struggling in Scottish football due to the COVID virus. Now, he's supposedly saying that Celtic, Mark, will be the only club that won't be affected by the COVID pandemic, that we have 30 million in the bank before the COVID started, and we have a billionaire investor in Dermot Desmond. Do you fear for Scottish football, like, Mark, for this pandemic hitting the game?
I'm surprised that there haven't been some of the smaller clubs in that get really into some problems there. I really am. The small clubs that just rely on even their 500 fans that are coming through the turnstile every week just to pay their laundry women and things like that. But I wouldn't say Celtic won't be affected. I don't agree with that, Paul. We must be affected to some extent.
He said, but we've went through our 30 million pandemic, but we'll be the only club that will come out in a positive and will be, like, we're secure. He's saying, we're not going to be badly affected by the likes of other clubs, Mark. Like, supposing that this club that is up for sale will come out in the next few weeks and put out a statement that they're up for sale. And, like, is it worrying, like, that American businessmen coming into the Scottish game, like what we saw down in South with the Glaciers and the Liverpool owners. Like they're trying to change this game into like American football. Would you like American investors coming into the Scottish game?
Well, for me, anybody investing in the Scottish game's got to be a good thing, as long as it's not like a mad guy that invested in Dundee and things like that. Do you know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
eh, I don't think America's businessmen would look at the SPL as in the same light as English kind of game, and we could get into the Super League if we buy that kind of rigmarole through Scotland. I think it probably would be a good thing, Paul. Aberdeen, they got bought by an American, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Money into them, and I think it would be a good thing. As long as
American owners that own Dundee United as well.
as I have,
Yeah.
well, I mean, have you seen any like major changes going on there, Paul? Michael, with this way they're trying to run things.
Well, that's one thing that I'll say about, like, people can say what they want about the Glazers and this, that, and they're no stupid. They know how to run a business, and it's all about profit for them. And Dundee United have went from being seriously in debt to not much at all.
Well, that's got to be a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I mean. They've invested a lot in the youths. The stadium's been upgraded massively. Actually, it's quite a nice looking stadium because it was looking run down before they took it, and they've invested heavily in the team as well.
I think if it was Celtic or Rangers that they were looking to buy into, you'd think, oh, this could get a bit messy at some point further down the line. But I think with smaller clubs and that, I think it would do them a lot of good, if just for the financial aspect to it.
I just think, like, everybody's got the doom and gloom regarding Scottish football and the COVID and just this whole, like, the finances side of things. Everybody's going to take a hit, every club, but it will bounce back. It's going to be harsh for a few wee while, but it will bounce back in time. There's too much doom and gloom. Every time you open a paper or read something, it's always the death of something. You know what I mean? Like I said, everything will bounce back eventually.
Mm-hmm. But should the Scottish FA kind of provide assistance to these clubs, like these lower league clubs, as you said, that have going to be really hit? Like, or do the Scottish FA have the money to assist these clubs?
I think that's just down to money, Paul. A day, whether it's the SFA or the SPFL. If anything, the government should be trying to help them out. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of all that furlough and things like that. I mean, my wife's she works in a supermarket, so she's not been off for anything at all for the full of the pandemic thing. But I don't know how it works with football players or even part-time workers or whatever, but the government should surely be able to find some kind of money to help out these smaller clubs.
Mm-hmm. I think it has been talked, suggested by a few that maybe Celtic should be offering loans to these teams to secure the safety of Scottish football, and Celtic then retrieve the money back with some interest. Would that be something, Michael, that maybe Celtic should be looking to do?
I don't know. Like it says, the whole finance thing is up in the air for every club, is it?
Mm-hmm.
You mean, Paul, Greenham?
Loan, take the safeguard the clubs, yeah.
No.
Yeah, a loan of money to safeguard the clubs that are struggling. Like, this has been suggested. It was a couple of months back, and it popped up again that Celtic should give these lower league teams and lower league clubs a loan of money, and Celtic then would recoup the money back with some interest.
That would probably be against the regulations.
Yeah, it's.
I wouldn't do it anyway.
Yeah,
what's to stop us going and asking Man City for £200 million?
But it's going back to the thing, Mark, that Michael said before the podcast, that, like, you have to give credit to Celtic for keeping our books in order and keeping the club afloat, that we were able to stop staying this pandemic, and for the club to come out, and like they will be affected, but not to the effect of some other clubs. Like, you have to give credit to Celtic Football Club for having money in their bank account,
Well, just again, it shows how well Peter Lawell did run us on that side of things. We've never doubted him or any of the financial side of things. It was never doubted him in making money. It was spending it we had a problem with him.
And Lawell also stated that, look, Lawell, as if people don't know, he was an advisor to Fergus McCann when he took over Celtic in 1994 from bankruptcy. He also stated that it would take a long, long time for Celtic to reach the standards of 1994 again. Mark, would you agree with that? Do you think we're a long way away from that happening again?
Miles away. Miles and miles and miles, Paul. Celtic will never end up in that position again. Never.
I think, like, for one thing, Michael, you have to say is that Celtic actually learned their lessons from keeping their spend to a minimum and buying within their means. Like, you have to give credit.
I've said that on previous podcasts loads of times. I've always applauded Celtic for, and I've always said that I get sick of hearing about this biscuit tin penny mentality. Celtic have always lived within their means, wages and transfer fees. And like Mark said on previous podcasts as well, we've spent a lot of money on players. It's just been on crap.
Exactly.
Like says, 5 million on a Jetty, 5 million on Barkas, a lot of money on Duffy to get him up here. So there's been a lot of money spent. So
not just this season either, Mark. We've always kind of
we have always
invested in the squad. We always invest in the squad, but it's more like, as you said, like, it's more signing one quality player rather than 2 or 3 different players for the same price, really, and it's just making up the numbers.
We spend too much money on like squad players instead of lumping it on and getting a first team player in. It's just, I've said, that's what Mikey's saying. I've said it as well. We spend a lot of money, but we don't spend it wise enough. That's what's wrong with it. The decision making on what we spend it on has been wrong.
Would you be hoping, Mark? Go on, Michael, go on.
Sorry, like you just need to look at players like Jack Hendry out on loan, the Bulgarian, the Ukrainian guy that we've got out on loan,
Fed
Bio we've got out on loan. Look how much money's been wasted. As well, on top of that, everybody that saw at the club that cost a lot of money.
But Mark, who's this down to then? Like, is this down to Nick Hammond, or is it down to Peter Lawell, or is it just basically the two of them or bad scouting or what?
Well, even Conger's got to take some of the blame then as well if we're going to bring them into it. But these guys will recommend a player and say, "Oh, he's a young talent. He might be good." And I think Lowell just looked at the money involved and thought, right, that's who we'll go for then. Him. He's the cheapest. If he's only 5 million, it's all right. If we can get 4 or 5 million for him in 2 or 3 years, that's the way we'll go.
So, moving on from Peter Lawell, as Mark and Michael said, we hope that he's not staying on as a Celtic consultant to Dominic McCoy, and Dominic McCoy we left to be his own man within Celtic. And next we're going to move on to the Celtic exodus and rebuild, which we believe is already starting. So Celtic exodus is well underway. Patrick Miller, we know, has left the club already. Ryan Christie, Edward, Christopher are eager to leave the club immediately as soon as the transfer window opens. Ryan Christie has told the club he will not sign a new contract and wants to leave immediately once the transfer window opens, and would like to move to Norwich or Burnley, who are reportedly interested. Now, it's come out today, and I only saw today, that a Bundesliga team, Michael, have made a bid for Christie in January that the club refused, and that's basically when he decided to down tools that he didn't get the move he wanted. Like, we know he's going to leave, but do you think Celtic should have sold him in January?
Celtic will sell who they want when they want. They're not going to hold held to ransom from any player. No, I mean, this is again getting back to this about player power and this new era. Going back then, can you imagine Larsson and Hartson and that doing this back in the day? They would have got told where to go.
Is that the problem, Mark, that the player power within the game now these days? Like, a manager sacked down in tools is the manager who suffers and not the players. Like, is that the modern game now?
Players and agents, it's basically their faults. I mean, I can remember Mike here I don't know if you're old enough to remember when Jim McLean was Dundee United manager and he'd all the young boys.
He had 10-year. Davy Neri, and that was on a 10-year deal, and Celtic came in for him 3 or 4 times.
And they were on buttons and couldn't get out of the contract. I mean, that wasn't right. But you can't. We seem to have went to the complete opposite extreme now, where players just, right, that's it, I want out, and they're all right, no bother, we'll pay up what we owe you and we'll try and help find you a new club. A lot of it for me comes to agents, because they're always looking for moves, because that's how they make their money.
But now looking to Mark, like back, if this bid that was supposed to come in for Christie was in around the 8-10 million mark in January, now supposedly a new deal has came out that Christie had a clause in his current contract that his deal runs out in December and he's able to sign a pre-contract with a team in January. Is that bad management from the board, Mark, that they didn't sell him then?
I don't believe that about the contract. I've been through this before on the forum. Contracts, and I've even seen ex-professionals coming out and saying it. Some people on Twitter about it as well when this Christie thing came out. Football contracts run to the end of
season
to season, unless it's a short-term deal, or if you're like in see the other countries that play summer football.
The only countries like Norwegian clubs and Sweden clubs, they all run out in December.
And this seems to come up all the time with Celtic players. Mind it came up with Brown the last time it was, and that's when. And I've even had Ed too coming on the forum to explain it, and he knows the laws of the game. Believe me, you know what I mean?
Because it's a strange one, Mark. Ain't it? Like, because like if we say if it did run out in January, like it's the in my time following football, it'll be the first time ever I've noticed the player's contract run out in the middle of a season. Like, I can't see why Celtic would even do that. Let a player end his contract midway through a season.
I don't think it's.
I think
the regulation player registration.
People can say what they want about Peter Lawell and that, but does anybody actually think that he would
let that let
that happen to a contract in December?
No, how I kind of think it's came about. He signed a contract extension in November, and the way it was reported, it was just, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years or whatever. So I think the stories came from that story that he signed a contract in November for 3 years. So come this new year, I think it's that.
Like,
I think that's really
the only thing I can think of, Mark, is like that he'd be able to sign a pre-contract with a team in January. Do you know that you can sign a pre-contract if your contract's running out this season? Do you know?
Well, if Christie's contract's running out in December, he's been free to sign a pre-contract for June.
Exactly. Now, obviously, Michael, think realistically, what do you think Celtic will get for Christie now that we say he has a year left his contract and he wants to leave? Realistic, what?
Well, based on his performances this season, you'd be lucky to get 10 bob for him, would you?
But
that's what I mean. This is what I mean, like what you were saying, like he wants to move to Norwich or Burnley. How does that work out for Gary Hooper?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Down there. You know what I mean? Like,
but that's well, Michael, that's one thing like I can't understand. Like this year, like that these players want these big moves, but they've played so badly this season. What big club is actually going to look at them and say, "Right, look, he done tools there in Celtic because he didn't get his way"? Is he going to be doing that in our club if he doesn't get away? Like they're putting their old football career at risk too by down in tools this year, aren't they, Mark?
Oh, I've said that as well. If you're looking to get a big move, you need to produce in the big games. And Celtic players just didn't do that.
There's not one person in that chat or on the forum, if you asked them right now, would say they would want to keep Christie at the club.
I wouldn't think it would be unless he's
no chance.
Unless his dad's creeped in.
So there's no. I mean, that tells you everything about him.
His dad doesn't even want him to stay at Celtic. It's him that's helping hawk him about, isn't it?
Yeah. When he first signed for Celtic, it was his dad in the press on about how they're all a family of Celtic supporters and it's a dream move. And within 2-3.
Mind when he was injured, the camera was going up to him and his wife sitting. She was sitting greeting and all that because he'd been injured. And that. My wife sitting greeting. Mind to get the bad at. Mind it was his sight, his face, his eye that got it.
Yeah.
And then it was as if his boy was living his dad's dreams, wasn't it? That was the way it was.
Then 2-3 years later, he's getting him a move to everywhere. But like you say, I'm a massive fan of the Bundesliga. And what you were saying, Paul, if there was a team who willing to pay 8-10 million for him, I'm starting to question actually watching that league now.
Mm-hmm. You put 5-6 million, Mark. Some people are saying on the live chat, like, can we expect that, or do you think we could expect less than 5 for Christie?
I'd say about 5.
Yeah, that's max.
So moving on from Christie, another player who we all expect was going to leave, but he's another player who actually has told Celtic that he wants to leave immediately when they think. Reportedly, Newcastle have watched Christopher Foyer at the weekend against Rangers and see him as an ideal replacement as a defender in their squad, and they rate him at a cut price deal of 8 million. Mark, what do you think of that?
No chance. If they want, they'll need to double that at least. They'll need to double that if they want higher.
But could we demand more, Mark, seeing that he's in the last year of his contract? Because if he doesn't, like, my fear is that, like, these players don't get this move, they'd run down their contract and move for nothing at the end of the season.
But Paul, what's £15 million in the English Premier League?
Michael?
I've got a different mentality on, like you say, getting something rather than, I'd rather just keep him. It's the same as Edward, like you've heard about this 40% sell and 25% sell in about a year. I'd just keep him. Like I said, I'm maybe well wrong here, but I can't remember Ayer coming out recently and saying that he definitely wants to leave. I may be wrong here, like, but I've never actually heard him say it. I've heard a lot of paper talk, but I've never heard him say it.
Marcus, coming up down the live chat there from Rob McNair that, trust me, Celtic Rumours TV, that Christie's contract is up in December. Look, we'll have to wait and see, or just really kind of see what happens in this progress. But it's a strange one if it is, you know. Edward, we know, is another player who will go on, but supposedly Liverpool have said they're not interested in him, and Arsenal seem to be the kind of only team, again, Mark, that are kind of looking at Edward. You know, I've listed 15-20 million Celtic should be demanded there, I think, for Edward.
Easy.
You know, so
well, I wouldn't surprise me if they were still asking for more.
Like, considering, like, how well he's actually played for France this season, and look, he is, no matter he didn't have a good season this year, he's still, as Michael said and Jonas said, he's a top scorer still in the Scottish League. Like, so
it's even because the season he's had for us, he is still top goal scorer, but even he's not tried a leg.
you know,
See, people that have been watching him for 2 years, 3 years, they'll still know that the player Edward's going to be.
So I was looking at the list last night and looking at players who are potentially going to leave Celtic next season. So next season I have leaving the club, we're going to have Shane Duffy, John Joe Kelly, Christopher Foyer, Laxell, maybe Antti Ranson out on loan, Beaton maybe might go, Scott Brown, Ryan Christie, Wojciech, Elanusi, Lee Griffiths, Edward, Jack Henry maybe, Balangoli maybe, Olivier Cham, Sheved, Bayu. Like, that's 17 players. If we say are leaving the club, Mark, you know, with no manager in place, like, that's a huge job for any manager to come into a club if you've that many players who might leave the club, isn't it?
Oh, it's a massive rebuild. We've said that before. It's really we're looking for practically a new full team.
But Michael, do you agree, like, realistically, like, could these players actually end up leaving Celtic? Like, the names are like realistic, like the players who are now out on loan, like you said there, like Bayu, Shavad and stuff. Like, can you see them getting a career under a new manager of Celtic, or are they just not good enough?
They're not good enough. I remember the talk a few weeks ago. I remember Jack Hendry. That Celtic will keep him, and he's a good player and everything. Did anybody watch him on international duty?
Exactly.
I didn't see it, but even I was up about him when we were talking about that. I seen people who had been moaning about how he played for Scotland as well. It was just the same Jack Hendry that we'd all seen before.
Bio, like it says, whenever I've seen him, and it was very little. Again, he's like that. Remember that Amido Balde they signed? He just reminds me of him. Just as bad. And the Sheved, he's never going to settle. Like, he's just one of the guys that's better. He's sticking to his roots in Ukraine and just going back there. There maybe is a player in him, but He's never going to settle here.
But Mark, was there an issue too with Shepard again about his attitude and his laziness as well in training? Wanted there was.
He took that out with him to wherever it is to now. And the manager said he was hiding in training. He says he was trying to find him and he was ducking down behind bigger, taller people.
He was the pool champion, like he couldn't play football, like, but he was good at pool.
He said something like that, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Just go and play pool as a professional or something.
He said billiards.
And then the thing I read, he knuckled down and was running amok for them and did really well.
But
I think he comes up at Celtic, but as Mikey says, I think there is a player in there.
Has Bangoli any chance of getting forgiveness from the Celtic fans, Mark?
I like Barkas. Like I says, I seen enough from him away from Celtic, and like I says, when we went to sign him, it wasn't just Celtic that were wanting him for that kind of money. There was loads of clubs. I think, like I says, he deserves at least a pre-season, but COVID behind me, to just prove himself under a new manager.
Yeah, exactly. I actually agree, Joe. Like, considering, Mark, like what we have to do with the rest of the team and the amount of money we kind of paid with Barkas as well, like maybe we should concentrate on other positions next season and maybe give Barkas another run. What do you think?
I've said as well, I think there's a goalkeeper somewhere in Barkas. It's just a confidence been moving to a new country. But
would you want to back up Denmark because of Bain and Hazard being a bit young? Like we saw Bain I think the last couple of weeks and
loan. I think Hazard will get on loan next season. He spoke about it. I mean, they signed that contract and then came out and spoke about he needed to be playing football. So if he was leaving Celtic, he wasn't going to sign a new contract.
Go out and loan it for down the road.
I think that's the plan. He's signed a new contract with Celtic and he wants to go next season and loan to play first team football regularly.
But even having been, go on, sorry.
Just back to Barkas, if we could get our money back on them, well, really, it's just as well cutting our losses and taking the money back. But I would they talking away out and loaning that? No, definitely no. Because if we sell them back for 4.5 million, 5 million, we need that money to buy his replacement.
See, I would keep Barkas under the new manager if he wants to keep him, and then I would punt Bain to Dundee United and take Siegrist. I'd play money in Bain and get Siegrist in as a decent backup, because I've already says that I don't think he would be a number one at Celtic, but he's certainly good enough to be a backup.
It would be a worry, Michael, like if you had Barkas and Bain as your two keepers again next season, wouldn't it?
No, but everybody goes on about Barkas. And okay, he's had a bad season in that, but I can excuse that people going, he's 5 million at that. But like he says, he came in from a foreign country into this like mad pandemic. Bain's been there for years, and he's useless. He's really bad. I can't even like.
So what did you say about him the last time? That he was shifted out by Dundee, then he went to Hibs, and then he was shifted out there or something like that. Was it? You were saying the last time?
Everywhere. Like he says, he started off at Aberdeen, then I think he got released there as a youth. Went to Alloa, I think it was, with Paul Hartley. Got his move to Dundee when they were in the Championship. Fell out with Neil McCann, I think it was. Neil McCann, I think, at the time.
Yeah, Neil McCann.
Then got moved on to Hibs, and I think it was 2 or 3 days later after signing for Hibs, he was then signed for Celtic as a backup.
That's right, aye.
Was it he was only signed for us, Mark, because we had injuries to Craig Gordon that time, wasn't it? He was sent in, was an emergency kind of a loan that time, wasn't it? When we a player who's always kind of injured, and I put him down because a lot of fans are saying that maybe he will go, that he's been in the comfort zone for too long at Celtic, but he's a player that you'd like to keep around because of his experience. Mark is beat on,
No, see, it's just one of the. He's been there that long. He's never really claimed a position to be his own. I think he's kind of ability to play in 2 or 3 different positions. I think that's kind of held him back because he's never really shown out in any of them.
So, like, realistically, we say if these are the players to leave and stuff like that, what would you think Celtic should be expecting from transfers, Michael, roughly on these? Like, we know some of them leaving on free transfers and some of us are going back on loan, but the players that are actually signed in contracts. Like, what do you think we'll be receiving in transfers?
Well, I think we'll get our money back for a bio. I mean, I can't believe that I'm actually saying that, but I think Toulouse or a team over there will pay for him.
Mm-hmm.
Sheved, I think, will go back to Ukraine. We'll probably loss on him. The big one. Sorry, got disconnected there. The big one for me is Edward. I still think that he'll for big money. Yeah.
I think that's the big one, Mark. Into Edward, into this, that could really make or break like the transfer funds. Do you think that what they will see for Edward?
Well, Edward the Dyer, the Gizzard, I think you two should bring it in. I'd be looking for
35
million for the two of them.
Because if you're saying 20 for Edward and even 10 for Ayer, I think if Ayer went for a tenner for 10 million, I think that's a joke. Just considering what he's going to go into. Like he says, he's got to be 15 plus at least.
With Rangers already they signed a striker yesterday, Zambadian striker Zakala, if I have his name right, and they're already starting to plan for next season. Are we at a disadvantage already, considering we've no manager in place, we've no director of football, there's no news from the club, we don't know who's staying or going within the club? Are we actually in a mess, Mark, towards this rebuild already?
No, I wouldn't say we're in a mess. I wouldn't go that far. We've got a big rebuild in front of us, but the sales of people that'll be leaving, there'll be plenty of money there to do it.
Mm-hmm. Michael?
People are saying that Rangers have signed this guy on a free or whatever it is. He scored 20 goals in just under 100 games in the Belgian league.
Exactly.
First, he went and played for Spartak Moscow and couldn't get a game and got punted into the reserves. And even for the reserves, he only scored 10 goals in 40 games. Exactly. And that's what I mean. They've bought him on a free because Morelos is leaving at the end of the season. And no matter what anybody can say about that Morelos, and he is what he is, but they'll not be able to replace his goals that he scores against the weird teams and in Europe. So everybody's going to be set up at a disadvantage. They're signing players like that because they've not got any money to spend either. They've not got any. We've got money to spend. They've not.
You always seem to pop up with the money, Mark, don't they? The side players, don't they? Where it comes from, we don't know, but they always seem to pop up with money to get their signings, though, don't they?
Well, but they're doing into their directors and that are pummeling money into them and then taking shares out of it.
Taking shares, yeah. So it also came out this week, and we know who the pundits are, and we weren't meant to think that Rangers are now the strongest club in Celtic, and Celtic need at least 17 players, was stated, and that we are now years behind Rangers in terms of first team squad players. What you think? You know the person who I'm on about here who said this. He's employed by Sky Sports, and he's always been critical of Celtic. I won't mention his name because Mark will go on ranting about him, but what do you think of his comments, Mark?
Maybe just for the chat that I don't actually know.
Chris Boyd.
So
Mark, he's come out and he said that that we're now behind Rangers in terms of first team strength, and it's actually really the biggest rebuild next season, and that Rangers now the strongest team in Scotland. What do you think about that?
I wouldn't say Rangers are the strongest team in Scotland. They will be once we sell everybody right enough, but still that, I've said before, it's on paper Celtic's still the best team in Scotland. Rangers are just better than us this year for one reason or another. We seriously dropped the ball, but it's Chris Boyd's just the same as what we're going to speak about now, probably, Paul. It's the same as all the pundits. He's there to do a job. And
Michael, what do you think? Oh, sorry, Mark. What?
He's there to do a job, and that's what subscribers of Sky want to see. People slagging Celtic off.
But Michael, are we behind Rangers, or is it just because we failed so badly this season that we're giving their fans to think that they're the biggest club? You know?
I mean, this is again this. Like I said, I know wanting to go back on it and that. They're going the Rangers and this biggest club and the league titles and everything. Like I say, they're the only club that's less than 10 years old that have won 55 titles. You know what I mean? Like, it's unbelievable. Like, yeah. Like, and I keep reiterating to everybody in any arguments I have with Rangers supporters or that. That's the first thing I say. What team do you support? Pre-2012 or after? No, I mean, like, what end is it you're deciding to support today? You know what I mean? Rangers are the biggest club. Rangers as a team are mediocre. Like, Celtic have been a disaster this season. No Celtic fan will try and tell you otherwise. If Celtic get the right manager in place soon and get the right signings, it'll be an easy title to retain, like thing, because their bottle will crash again when the fans are back. Like I say, once their fans start getting on their case and that like I say, that's when you'll see return. That's why I keep saying Rangers are this and Rangers that. Who would even listen to Chris Boyd anyway? I mean, they're going on about banning other like people from that. He shouldn't be allowed anywhere near Celtic Park in the future. Him.
See what happens on the podcast when I mention Chris Boyd. So, moving on from that, like to make a statement against these things that Rangers are now the biggest club. Do we expect David Desmond to make killer statements in announcing? We say Eddie Howe harkens director of football, and he will make this the biggest record rebuild in Celtic history, and he will provide numerous funds for the manager and sign targets that he wants. Do you think that's going to happen, Mark?
Well, hopefully. I think that's what we all want, really, isn't it?
I think
whether it happens or no, that's the big question.
I think that's going to be like the intent, Mark, isn't it? That the appointment of the manager, and if we're going to get a direct vote, those two names are going to show what way Celtic are going to go, doesn't it?
People say as well that people say that there's a lot of money to be spent under the new manager and that, which I agree. But there's also going to be a lot of money made with just selling the players that we've got.
Yeah.
Like you say, there's going to be 30, 40 million available when players are sold. That's a lot of money to put in the transfer kitty for a start, just for players in the team. Okay, we've got a big player to replace in Edward and Ayer. That's two players that are going to need to be replaced with quality. But that's a 40 million. People say it doesn't get you a lot. It could if it's spent right.
Exactly, Mark.
I agree with Michael there, definitely. That's what I said earlier on. It's how you spend the money, it's an important thing. There will be money there. There'll already be the transfer kitty, and then there'll be what he gets for transfer, the outgoing transfers. I don't think there'll be scrimping and scraping time for Celtic.
Even going back to what the last few topics was there with David Lowe saying that even after pandemic, like Celtic would be still immune to the COVID financial disaster, and that we have hit our 30 million, but even with spending transfers and receiving transfers, Celtic will still be in a healthy position, Mark. That's something to really applaud Desmond and Peter a lot about, that we're able to spend big for this rebuild and still have money in reserves, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Nobody's any complaints about what Peter Lawwell's done financially for Celtic.
I think what people don't kind of see that, Mark, do they? They see like a lot of people just see the bad signings he's done, the thing, but they don't see like what he actually did for Celtic, making the club stable. That
whether they agree or disagree with his decisions, financially we're in the position we are because of Peter Lawwell.
Yeah, exactly.
I've always said that as well. Like you say, I've never questioned the money that's spent ever. Like you say, it's just been how it's spent that's been a disaster. Like I said, nobody can question the money that Celtic have spent. That's why it always annoyed me in the past, and I'll say it again, about this biscuit tin thing that keeps coming up. It irritates me because they've spent plenty of money. Like you say, they should be well ahead of the curve. Like.
So we're going to move on from the rebuild, and we hope some announcements come soon, but we're always saying it, but look, patience is the key. At least we're not rushing this manager's decision like in the past. So I want to move on, and next thing I want to talk about is former Celtic player and Sky's pundit is now officially banned from Celtic Park over comments he made about Celtic's Dubai trip during the start of the year. Roker has also been banned, as we know, by Rangers after being refused to Ibrox on Sunday, where he was supposed to be co-commentator for the match. Now, it has come out that that Andy Walker is planning to put a lawsuit, Mark, to Celtic about the loss of earnings, and that he should be able to say what he wants because he's a commentator and freedom of speech for journalism. What way do you think Celtic should react to this possible lawsuit that's going to come down? If it does come down, could be all paper talk as well, and Mark?
You there?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just really, really petty, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Celtic banned him for Celtic Park. They were talking about Chris Boyd. The things Chris Boyd comes away with. Do you get what I mean? Why's he not been banned?
Mm-hmm.
Celtic are bigger than playing stupid, petty games, press and the media, I think. And that's why I think a lot of the times we don't speak out against things.
Mm-hmm.
We go at Rangers, look as if, look at all this dignified staunchness and all that, but they're away bleating like Wayne anytime anything goes against them.
Because what got me, Michael, was that it actually only came out that he was banned from Celtic really after he was refused permission to enter Ibrox on Sunday. Did you hear anything about him in the past being banned from Celtic, or was it just came to light after the game, Michael?
Right, like says, I'm a bit different to Mark on that, and it is petty, but I mean, not just Andy Walker, Davy Provan as well as ex-Celtic guys. I can't stand Andy Walker. Mm-hmm. I can't remember in 20 years listening to him on Sky or Satanta or whenever it was he started, him ever saying anything complimentary about Celtic ever. Even during
banned for Celtic just because he's done that.
I don't think he should be banned. But like he says, I didn't blame Celtic for acting in the way that he did. Every time that he's in that stadium, he's always spouting something negative. It's always negative, and I'm not saying everybody's got an opinion. That's fine.
But Mark, what is it like these former players like who come out like I'd say stuff like Charlie Nicholas is not. I'm going to speak about Charlie Nicholas later in the podcast. Chris Boyd is another one. As Michael said, Davy Provan. These are all Celtic players who once claimed they love the club, and they say they always say they're a Celtic supporter. They always say that when they're live on Sky Sports, they have inside information. Chris Commons said it numerous of times that he's known of rifts with inside the dressing rooms at Celtic. Like, what is it when they join Sky Sports then that they turn on the club? Like,
I don't think Mark will mind me saying he's a bit older than me, so he'll maybe be able to tell me about Davy Provan and Andy Walker. But there's obviously something, an agenda against Celtic they've got. Because, like I says, in my time listening to them, it's always just been negative. And Chris Commons, like you say, does anybody actually care what he says for whatever paper he's working for?
No.
I mean, nobody cares what he thinks. Like
he was commentating like. Chris Commons was saying at one stage like that there was rifts between Lee Lennon and supposedly he was the one who leaked out this thing that there was a fight in the dressing room and that someone made a call. If I'm led to believe, it was Chris Commons that said that he heard of this happening. Like, my thing is like, are they getting this information, Mark? Or are they trying to boost their own reputation within Sky Sports?
Chris Commons is just a snake anyway. He was one of the people that was a bad egg when Ronnie Dyler was in the job.
Feeding stories.
Yeah, he was the one that was feeding the stories everywhere. So he would know fine well about leaks, like, good old Chris Commons, like, because he was in the worst eggs ever, him.
If Neil Lennon was there and Chris Commons said it happened, it would have happened, because him and Neil Lennon are thick as thieves, Commons and Lennon. See if it's happened at a time when Lennon's been at the club and Commons said that, I would believe him.
But, like, is that not Chris Commons then, like, throwing his best friend into the deep end, Denmark? You know what I mean? Like, saying these stuff happens and should have been
doing his own job as well.
You know,
I mean,
but going back to what I'm saying though, Mark, is like, what is it why they're going to Sky Sports that they have this change of attitude? Is that coming from Sky being anti-Celtic, or
Sky? She's really that Sky Sports and that. It's all a bit like shock jockish, and they're all there to be controversial and say things that cause controversial, make yourself popular and things like that. And if you're coming out and knocking Celtic, that's what people want to hear.
And like you say, that's the reason that
Celtic want to hear it so they can moan about it, and the rest of them want to sit and listen to it and laugh about it.
And the reason Chris Commons and Davy Provan and Charlie Nicholas and Andy Walker talk about Celtic is because of how big the club is. They kind of going to get a reaction. They know they're going to get the views
And
And that's what it's all about now, is views.
because they've got a connection to the club, people think, oh, that must be true.
Which,
Sure, I'm going to throw myself in the deep end here now with the two of you here. So, is it time so for Celtic to take action against Sky Sports and ban Chris Boyd from Celtic Park because of the way he says things about Celtic? He's anti-Celtic, starts live on TV, his arrogance towards Celtic. Should we take a stance back and ban him from Celtic's Park and get Sky Sports to actually invest more?
If we're banning Andy Walker for talking about the Dubai trip, we should be banning Chris Boyd just for everything. But he's actually, even his conduct, he's not even got any class about him, the way he stands here on that, taking games. He's just, Chris Boyd's a nasty piece of work. I mean, there's ex-Rangers players that have come on as pundits, and I don't mind them.
Mm-hmm. You could actually say that Alan McCoy's like an ex-Rangers manager and had the risk, but he hasn't a bad word to say about Neil Lennon on Sky Sports. Do you know?
That's one thing. Like, Alan McCoy definitely had a bad thing to say about him ever.
No,
he is like you says, he was him and Walter Smith, and I mean that's saying something. Walter Smith.
Exactly.
But any guys that were friends with like Tommy Burns the way that they were, know what I mean?
Ali's just went back to being the cheeky chappy character and that.
Yeah, that's right.
Aye.
And even the banter with himself and Chris Sutton and stuff like that. Is that, you know?
I mean, that's what I mean. There's ways you go about these things. Do you know what I mean? But Chris Boyd is just, again, causing controversy and saying he's sitting there and he's not there as a commentator. He's there as an ex-Rangers player. That's basically.
Yeah, and he still classifies himself as a Rangers fan live on TV. He's no shame in saying it. He's no shame, like, boasting about when Rangers scored, putting out live tweets during the game. Like, shite be God, like, Sky Sports shouldn't be letting this happen, like, you know. But that's what I'm saying, like, you know.
It's funny what Mark said about the way he stands. I don't think I've ever wanted to slap somebody so hard the way that he stands on TV with his hand in this like wee pocket that he's got at the top of his coat. I mean, what does he think? It's like he's like a bouncer on a nightclub or something.
The legs pure akimbo and that. I don't. What's that all about?
Like, I don't understand it. Like it's like this big cool thing and that. Like yeah, like he says how like it's just hilarious to watch.
I think I know in the future how to get you two guys warmed up live in the podcast anyway. Future references. So
yeah, but the problem is like he's not respected anyway because he's just an idiot. He's just an idiot. That's what I mean. He's ignorant.
So do you think next season we say if Andy Walker will be banned from both Rangers and Celtic next season?
I don't think he'll be banned to Parkhead.
Do you think Sky Sports will be making changes to their panels next season, Mark? And if they did, who would you like to see on the Sky Sports Scottish football panel? Because Sky Sports always classify Scottish football as they classify Scottish football second class, don't they? They don't give it the respect that it needs.
They don't even for the money they give us. They don't. It's all they're interested in Celtic Rangers games.
That's it. Yeah, you're right.
The rest of it's just, I don't know what over. I don't even know.
But even the lack of games this season, like compared to last season when BT was on there, like, you know, even the lack of games that Rangers Sky Sports has shown across.
It's like you said, after a game, they just cut it off half the time. They didn't you never got to hear from the managers and players on Sky Sports News. They've not even got the decency to extend past the 90 minutes. It's like the 90 minutes ends and then boom, right onto something else.
You know, for
watch the game. I don't watch many of the games on Sky Sports. I go on the Celtic TVs. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but no, Sky Sports, because it's just rotten.
It was a bad move by the
overall quality of the presentation. It's just so. What do they think we are, a tin pot league? So we'll just treat it like a tin pot league.
Like considering, like Mark,
BT. Yeah. Different class. I thought the presentation for BT when they were covering the game. I'd see for even the sake of money, for all the money it is, we would have been better just taking less money for BT, because at least BT were trying to promote
show the interest. And now even like what I liked about BT as well is even before the actual main event, they had the half-an-hour segment before it just to talk even about everything Scottish football.
And they had impartial kind of content as well. Like Michael Stewart used to be commentating on games as well, and he always kind of gave an outside view on both teams as well. Like, you know,
Michael Stewart, impartial to a degree. I mean, he was still, like you say, he definitely didn't like Rangers. Like,
yeah, but
I'll say that for the guy. Like, I actually didn't mind. I even like Stephen Craigan to an extent. I actually didn't mind him either. Like, the whole panel were actually pretty good together until they brought obviously Alex Ray into it. But again, he's just the same as Chris Boyd, is he? You know what I mean?
But we know, like, we have Sky Sports at least for another 4 years, and we know that, as you said, Mark, it was the biggest money that offers. Like, but for the sake of the game of Scottish football being promoted, like, it has been a bad move for the Scottish game, hasn't it? Just giving all the rights to the Sky Sports, hasn't it?
There's nothing they can do, though, is it? It's got to go to the highest bidder, is it?
They've been a bit more forward thinking if they just thought, well, look at the effort BT have put in. They're doing their bit, they're promoting the games, they're spending time analysing the games as much as Sky do with their shows and that.
Or they should have got, or the SPL or whoever it is, we should have got assurances from Sky, whether bid, like TV time and this, that, and the next thing, because like you say, the quality on show and the presentation of the Scottish games, and no wonder the English like down there think our games that bad, because with the TV coverage it gets, it doesn't look very good.
But even after the Celtic and Rangers games, like after the game, it's cut off very fast as well, Michael. There's not much left on it. Like, as you said, you have to go off to Sky News to get like managers' pre-press conferences and stuff like that. Like, you know, it's really kind of after taking away what BT were after doing to the Scottish football the last couple of seasons.
They're not interested in the Scottish game, Sky Sports. They're interested in Celtic and Rangers, and that's because of the money that they bring. It's all about money with these companies, that's it.
And it's going back to, Mark, what Jonas was saying, that if Celtic and Rangers did move down south, would Sky Sports still invest in the Scottish game? You know?
They would, but it wouldn't be... That's the golden ticket took out the game if it happened, but they would still invest to some extent, but it would be buttons probably.
You know, I just think that they like you say, because of the money is like that going to be that low. I think they just pull the plug on the Scottish. But like I say, I would like to think that, like you say, that Celtic would be big enough to say it's like we talked about in the last podcast. It's all or nothing. I
mean, see, like I don't know how it works. Maybe one of you know, one of the boys in the chat know, but is it, see, when like Sky covered that game on Sunday, that Sky that owned that across the world, tell that to the American channels and the Australian channels. Is it Sky that
Sky have the exclusive rights for Scottish football, and what they do then is they'll sell it to the likes of S-Pan over in America. So I think S-Pan used to show matches last season, but I don't know if they're showing it this season because Sky Sports were involved in it. But S-Pan kind of had a link with BT Sports, and that's why they were showing them kind of last season. And now S-Pan don't show them anymore. You know, so I think
it actually sells the Celtic Rangers games about the world. You know, they own all the TV rights.
Yeah.
They must be making a fortune off of that.
Yeah. So, as we're on the topic of Sky Sports, just bear with me while I read out something. Another former Celtic player and former Sky pundit, Chad Nicholas. As you all know by now, Chad Nicholas has come out and said Scott Brown is no Celtic legend. His exact words were that all this talk about legend is nonsense. A legend should have someone's best player in a team in a position and be remembered for doing something like the Lisbon Lions. So winning 25 trophies over 14 years at the club is not classified as a legend and shouldn't be considered as a legend compared to Charlie Nicholas. Mark, what's your thoughts on Charlie Nicholas kind of blatantly slating Scott Brown here, hasn't he?
I would see, when I first read it, I thought it was a bit being tongue in cheek, because I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe it when I read it, what he was saying. It has to do something like the Lisbon Lions day, sir. Paul McStay, Tommy Burns are the Celtic legends. Charlie Nicholas has got a chip in his shoulder and about Celtic is getting back years. He seems to blame Celtic for choosing to go to Arsenal when he should have went to Liverpool. In his career, he's never had a good career after he left Celtic. I mean, Charlie Nicholas was my first Celtic hero. No, I think I was about 9 when he left, and I'll admit it, I probably did cry. But he was like my first real Celtic hero. Since then, he's just went right down in my estimations. As I said, if it's no tongue in cheek, if he's serious, it's shocking. Just again, we were talking about all these pundits that are on to be controversial and say things that we're talking about Charlie Nicholas. Do you get what I mean? It's just
Exactly.
it's kind of their version of clickbait websites and that. That's the kind of impression I get when you read stuff like this coming from.
Michael,
Like I say, I just worry about the sanity of some people. That's what I'm like. Scott Brown's no Celtic. Look what he did in the time that he's at Celtic and the trophies he's won. I mean, if it wasn't for him half the time dragging us through certain games, we wouldn't have won near as much as what we'll have in the last wee while. You know what I mean? He's been an outstanding player and captain for Celtic. I've been the most critical probably on the form of him in the last 6 months out of anybody. But you can't go on about he's not a Celtic legend. Come on.
But Mark, do you think in Charlie Nicholas's mind, does he actually think that he's a Celtic legend to be saying these stuff about Scott Brown? Like, does he class himself better than Scott Brown of what Charlie Nicholas did for Scotland, for Celtic, is better than what Scott Brown did for Celtic during his career? You know?
It wouldn't surprise me because it's Michael's saying this sometimes worries about what going on in people's heads when they come out with things like that, but Charlie Nicholas has always been a bit weird when he comes out whenever he's on the telly. It's as if he doesn't actually think at all before he opens his mouth. Probably guilty as that. He's as guilty as him, the new sitting here, but it just seems to say things again just to be controversial, and he's got some size of chip on his shoulder about Celtic in general. I can't mind off the top of my head, but there was something out of a contract back. I don't know if that was in his second stint, his first stint, or somehow a contract. He never seemed to get like losses, kind of arrogance about it. He was in the right. He should have been in the right. I think he's just best ignored now, Paul, to be honest. Does he still work on Sky?
No, he was let go from Sky Sports Saturday. Yeah, he was let go.
That was what I was going to say. He got dumped by Sky Sports at the start of the season because of the amount of nonsense that he talks. Probably.
Yeah, I've even heard stories of him. Somebody I know actually told me they were getting a flight up to Glasgow from London, and he was coming up to Charlie Nicholas was coming up to his turn on the Celtic telly, the Celtic game, and he was half cant at like 9:30 in the morning, drinking champagne and that on the plane, but he was already half cant getting on the plane.
He was kissing his Sky Sports check. I said, Mark, that's what he like. But like going by that, like if Scott Brown isn't classified as a Celtic legend, like in my generation, I don't know what can we expect to be a Celtic legend, you know, because legends come over years. You know, these players like Scott Brown.
Well, we did list the other week about them, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I even James Forrest on mine.
I like James Forrest. He's underrated.
Oh, I'm not his biggest fan, as I explained that night, but just for the length of time he's been at the club and the trophies he's won and that, to me, James Forrest is a Celtic legend. In years to come, you know what I mean? He'll be looked back on as a Celtic legend.
Exactly.
I think what Charlie Nicholas needs to realise as well is that not every player needs to be the stature of Larsson and Kenny Dalglish and that to be a status, like he says, like going back to when I was first growing up watching Celtic. My idol, as weirdly as it was Jackie Mack. I loved Jackie McNamara. Like he says, he was definitely not. And back then, to me, he was a Celtic legend.
I had Tom Boyd on my list that night. We'd done that with the legends as well.
There's probably a lot of fans that wouldn't consider Jackie Mack a legend, but to me, he was back in the day.
Yeah, but going back to what we were saying when Michael, you said that in the live chat there when we were talking about that, Mark, that was one player that me and you forgot to consider. And you think of it like the amount of years that Jackie McNamara spent at Celtic as well.
We did.
And commitment he showed to Celtic.
I thought, if I'd thought of him, I'd have him in over James Forrest.
You know, because it's unheard for now, like, to see players spending so much of their careers at one club. You know, and
funny, like he says, I just went and did some research, and this is a kind of funny story from last year, just after the pandemic. I went for a game of golf with my dad at Glen Eagles on the Ryder Cup course. And I met John Hartson there. He was playing golf that day. And I was speaking to him on the range. And he said, I was just asking him, he was speaking away. He was a great guy to have a conversation with. And I asked him, like, people that he never got on well with in the past. And there was only 2 people that he says he could never be in the same room with. And one of them was Charlie Nicholas.
Jesus.
So that shows you what John Hartson thinks of him. And the other one was actually Gordon Strachan. But he says that was just because he got rid of him and Gordon Strachan came in, and he joked about that. So
we'll move on from Charlie Nicholas, and something that's going to be on our next podcast, but we'll get Michael in on it, and we'll just get Mark to touch on it briefly before we close out the show. Is these reports coming out from Chelsea Football Club that from next season, from the 1st July, they're going to allow 2 fan supporters groups, like one person representing each group, to attend meetings, board meetings, to voice fans' concerns and things. Should Celtic, Michael, be looking into something like this? Have some fans on board meetings to the likes of, we know, Celtic Trust, who are demanding this kind of thing in board meetings, that they want to have someone on the board meetings. Should we be looking into something like that?
Progression, is it? Like, say, at the end of the day, the fans are the football club. You know what I mean? Like you say, you take the fans out, then that's the heart going to the football club. And I think fans have got every right to have a say as much as anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Mark, we touched on the Celtic Trust before when they came up with the Lindell Trust investors company that were involved in Celtic, and how they wanted a more input into the runs of Celtic, but the Chelsea group will just be there to hear these hearings and voice their...
On me, Paul. If you tell me this about this, I'd have asked Ed too about it. He would have been able to tell me about it.
No, but we're going to discuss it more detail on the next show. So I'm just getting...
Let us know. And I'll ask Ed too to find out what that that's coming out of Chelsea. See, the thing about it was, I've always think with these things, mind, who was that guy that ended up with Rangers board and lasted 2 days because they put some racist or something up on Twitter? I'd see when it comes to these fans group, to me it always comes down to the ego. At some time it comes down to the people's ego, and it'll be, I mean, who's going to choose who goes on to talk to these people? Who's going to choose who the spokesperson is, kind of thing? And then people think as well that if we could get somebody on the board, but see, once they go on the board, they've got their fiduciary duties, whatever they're called, and they're bound by boardroom confidentiality and that. Fans, it's weird. I don't think... I'm not saying it's not a good thing for fans to have a say in the club, but I don't think it's going to work the way people hope that it's going to work.
So my only issue, Mark, with that is, as you said, like they be bumped to board confidential and stuff like that. So the Celtic Trust is a big organisation with numerous of supporters. But we say if that information got spoken out to within the Celtic Trust, they fed back the information what the board were doing. And if someone leaked that information out to the media outlets that the board didn't want to get out, that's a worried sign as well going down the line, isn't it?
It'd be worrying as well for things like the stock exchange, and actually I've got to think you're getting into that kind of territory.
Fine line, is it?
What was that?
Exactly.
It's a fine line, is it, that you've got to watch here. Like you say, fans are, like you say, I'm all for fans, I'm going to say, but you also need to... We've got to watch.
Do you get what? They've got to know their capabilities. See, if it was going to be anybody, see, like JP Taylor. JP Taylor, to let him do it. He's been the SLO for many years. No, I mean, I knew him when he was still working in the ticket office 20 odd years ago. JP Taylor would be the ideal guy to do that.
See somebody that's level-headed as well. I mean, like, imagine somebody like myself into something like that.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just asking for trouble right away, is it?
I couldn't do it. I know for
I couldn't do it, no.
No. It's like we spoke about, Mikey, I know, about being referees. No matter how much you enjoy being a referee and try to be impartial, see if it comes to you refereeing a game, it's in your psyche, you're a bit biased, you're going to favour your own team.
Well, you're just honest enough to say that, like he says, and it came out of referees in the past that have had corrections with this, that, and that, and I just, and say they're impartial now, and I just think that you can't.
And you
You know what I mean?
on social media bodies accounts that are supposedly connected to your representative on the board and all that kind of part. It would just, if it was going to happen, it would need to be structured in the right kind of way.
But I'm just going to bring up something that's totally off subject just for a minute, and it's just a rumour that's came through just there from somebody that's just went and texted me. The rumour is that Celtic, and I don't know how this could have happened or what. Is it true that Celtic are close to finalising the deal for the young guy at Hibs, Josh Doig?
Josh Doig, yeah, I just saw that coming through there.
But that,
I just went and got a text through there, and that's the same guy that said about Edouard and that when we first signed him, even on loan going back then, and he's normally bang on the money for that, and supposedly he'll be announced in the next 48 hours.
It's gone back to us. We touch on this fans group again because I think it's an interesting thing, like to see if other clubs will start going bringing fans onto board meetings. But it's just going back to the dying issue there. That it's going back to what Barry said last podcast, Mark, that Celtic should be signing the next big talent in Scottish football, and this Hibs player is listing the next big talent in Scottish football, and to sign him would be a big statement.
I've seen him a few times and thought he was okay, and I'm sure I mentioned it on the forum, but a couple of the guys weren't too keen on him and said he wasn't good enough in that. But I was impressed with what I seen him. How do you pronounce it? Is it Doig?
Yeah, Josh Doig, yeah.
Doig. I was impressed with him, and I've said that as well, Paul. We need to look at the best young. We should have been doing it for years, mate. See, back when Rangers were doing 9 in a row, that's how guys like McInnes and that end up at Rangers. They weren't great players, but they were the best players. He was a good player in Scotland at the time.
Even Charlie Muller and that back in the day as well.
Like that, they just signed the best. They made sure they were signing the best players in Scotland, and that way Celtic weren't they? That was basically the way Rangers.
Neil McCann was another good in for that. Did a ton for them too, back in the day. Neil McCann, he was decent.
Neil McCann told me at Paul McStay's testimonial he was signing for Celtic. That's gospel. I had witnesses and everything to that. Neil McCann told me testimonial he was signing for Celtic.
So I just gone back there to the live chat there for this is going back to what you're saying there about Celtic already supposedly signing players that David Thompson said Celtic are working hard behind the scenes, working on the background, putting stuff together and putting proper structure. So realistically, like if things are happening this way, you have to take that a manager has already been installed, that we know the manager's been installed. If we're kind of signing these players, Mark, already, you would kind of think that there's a manager there already working behind the scenes, wouldn't you?
It's looking more and more like it if these stories coming out are true. I did a link earlier and I can't find it anywhere it was. There was some journalist and he said even behind the scenes the Celtic board have been like dropping hints that the manager's in place and working. Again, we've said it earlier on the podcast. If Lee Griffiths has been told that he wants a look at you, how they must know who the new manager is.
I mean, the manager must have sense as well because there's a couple of guys on the phone that are no interested in Griffiths, but I mean I say it a lot, but he's a no-brainer to give a pre-season to see how he comes back and fit in that because he's guaranteed goals. That guy.
Yeah, and another player that Celtic should consider, and we spoke about him in depth, Mark and Michael, is Lewis Ferguson, another up-and-coming talent in Scottish football. He's a player definitely that realistically could replace Scott Brown if Celtic have a big interest in Scottish players that he should be one we should be making a bid for.
I'll be sick if he doesn't end up at Celtic. I'll be sick if he goes on elsewhere.
It's a no-brainer for me.
You know, but
even if Celtic need to spend serious money on him, just to even blow Rangers out the water with wages and transfer fees, they should do it. See if Aberdeen turn around and say they want £8 million for him. Why no?
Well, the thing is that look at Scott Brown. Look at how key that signing was for 10 years. He just beat Rangers to the signing of him. You know what I mean? And then look what happened. So, you know what I mean? Like you say, they've got to do it again.
That
People they're talking rubbish and that, saying spend £8 million on him, but we've seen him. We know what he's capable of and the potential that he's shown. It's just, see if he was a foreign player, and you put a video clip up of him and said Celtic are in for him meant to be £8 million, people will be, oh, that's great, let's get him signed.
Well, people are going on about Xherdan Shaqiri, and I've been a massive fan of him for years. And if he's coming on loan, then great. I mean, I can't see Celtic helping anybody, Celtic out with players, especially with a link to him. But think of the money that it would cost to get him on loan.
Exactly.
Would it not be better actually putting that money into a permanent, proper player?
It's going to only get better in 3 or
It's only going to get better. And
serious money for probably.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. He's going to cost a fortune to bring in that Xherdan Shaqiri on loan.
That's go back to kind of previous things, Mark. I said in podcasts like this rebuild, like should we be more looking to the future of the first team rather than just doing a quick fix and getting these players like Shaqiri and stuff like that on big wages and big sign on loan fees? You know, should we be signing the best talents that are in Scottish football and the best?
Mix it up a wee bit. It doesn't need to be just one road we take.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about Barkas leaving. Mentioned the other night that Bournemouth keeper Begovic. I'd be happy we get him. He's in a free transfer. I'd be happy if Barkas left and we signed Begovic in a 1 or 2 year deal. I'd be happy enough with that while Connor Hazard's out on loan and see how he develops.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about that, though, is I would be happy enough with that as well, Mark, as long as it's not a loan deal for Barkas back to AEK. Because he'll be going back for what they paid or nothing.
I said that earlier as well, Mikey, for getting more money back for him.
Yeah, that's fine.
Aye, no a loan, no.
Because if they're going to go and loan him out, then just keep him. just keep him and give him a pre-season. But if, like Asmir Begovic, I said that as well. I mean, he's been about for a while, but he's not that old either. That's what I mean. He's been a top keeper down there for the last 12 years or something.
He's been playing down there for years. Older, experienced. He'd be a great signing.
Even for the likes of trading Barkas and stuff like that, Begovic, like would this just give more experience to him as a goalkeeper? You know.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to check there. That's when you know you're getting older. I was born in 86. Begovic is only 83, born in 87, so he's only 33 years of age. So I thought he was actually a lot older than that.
Is that all he is? Is it 30?
Yeah, he's only just turned 30. He's only just turned 33. He's waiting to be 34 in June.
Oh, I thought he was a lot older than that as well.
So we can actually see by Alan McGregor that actually, if you're the right professional, you look after yourself as a goalkeeper, you can play right into your 40s, Mark, can't you? You know, if you keep yourself fit and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah,
you know,
really fancy goalkeepers at that age at Celtic or that, but if that's all Begovic is, that's a great shout. That
only just 33, like he says, and if he's available,
he was about 36. It's just that's how long he's been about.
Yeah, like he came on to see when he was young. Because remember, was he maybe at Portsmouth or that when he was younger? I think.
Yeah, Portsmouth. Yeah, jeez, I actually.
He was at Portsmouth. He started in 2005 at Portsmouth, then he went to Stoke, then Chelsea, then to Bournemouth.
But what is his contract situation? Is it up or?
Yeah, his contract's up at the end of the season, but he just recently went on loan to Milan as well, so he's obviously well sought after.
I forgot about that, Mikey. Well, good shout.
You know. So, like I say, he's like that's different. Like I say, I'm trying to blow Barkas up here, and I'd love to keep him, but like he says, if you're able to recoup the money for him and then bring in Begovic for free, then.
But it's going back to what we were saying earlier in the podcast, Michael, that we give Barkas another go and things like that. But having Begovic as a backup to Barkas would be great. But having Bain as backup to Barkas, like that's worrying that straight away, Mark, going into next season. Like into having Bain as your backup keeper again, if things didn't work out for Barkas. And we ended up with Bain again next season, you know, and we're back to this situation where we are this year with goalkeepers again, you know.
No, I don't think Bain will be there next season. I'm being honest, but
You know,
I might
like
be wrong.
we don't. I agree totally with you. Like we saw it like in the last couple of games, like that Bain isn't a quality keeper. You know, because the goals that have been shot at him, like you expect your keeper realistic to save these goals, Mark, don't you? You know?
I think Bain's get worse. Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
he has definitely got worse.
see when we signed him, I thought he was a decent keeper, and
I remember his debut was against
Against
Rangers.
Rangers, he did. It was against Rangers. Yeah, but even in that game, he nearly fumbled the ball too, but he just got it off the line.
Yeah,
You know,
he actually had an alright game that day, to be fair to him. But like Mark says, ever since that game, it's just been a steady decline.
Yeah,
I've argued on the forum that I think he was good enough for for number 2. I've said I think he was a good enough number 1 for a lot of SPL level teams.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure about that. Looking at Bain,
no,
it's a confidence thing with him as well, don't you?
Yeah, like same as like he says, I think Jonas was saying as well that Ben has still got a house in Dundee. After because he was with Dundee.
Jonas is renting it.
Yeah, Jonas is all over it.
You're hiding in the bin watching him.
But he says as much as he wouldn't like it, he's got a sneaky suspicion about that Benjamin Siegrist and Ben swapping my money. He's just got a bad feeling. A bad feeling for him. Good for us. Bad for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's number 1, Mikey.
Nah,
Siegrist, no.
but he'd be like he says. That's the kind of number 2 you're looking for.
Yeah,
Because he's steady.
I would be confident, Mark, going into next season with Barkas and Bain as your 2 main goalkeepers next season. Like, you know, you just don't feel confident the way it went this season. If Barkas doesn't turn out to be the keeper we're hoping it to be, like, geez, you couldn't depend on Bain filling the boots again. Like,
Oh,
it doesn't breed confidence either. When we were speaking to Barry, like the back four build confidence from your keeper. He was saying the other night, Mark, like you can obviously see that these players aren't getting no confidence with Bain behind them in goal. Like, you know,
confidence.
Back when Barry.
Well, it's not just confidence. There's no communication between the goalkeeper and the defence. We saw during the Rangers game, you saw Alan McGregor's ball
roaring at the lads. Yeah,
you know,
yeah, exactly.
There's none of that with Celtic. Even the defenders, you don't even see the defender. I mean, it's part and parcel of the game. If you make a mistake, somebody in your teammates shouting at you and saying, "Oh, get your finger out, don't let that happen again." There's been none of that with Celtic this season.
And like you see, you look at back, like you said, when Barry was playing back at Dundee back in the early days, and you look at the goalkeepers that they had. And even back when Barry played for Dundee, they had Julian Speroni as the number 1.
Speroni, the Crystal Palace keeper,
Again, a player that, and they also had Jamie Langfield as a backup. So even back in Dundee, back when like Barry, they were 2 top goalkeepers, especially Speroni. He was a really good goalkeeper. Well, back onto like the Celtic thing, it's surely if I had Barkas and Siegrist, I would be happy enough. But Barkas and Bain, again, that's just asking for problems. But if we had Begovic and Siegrist, that's a major upgrade for next season.
Exactly. So, folks, we're going to let it there for tonight. Thanks again for Michael for joining us on the show, and thanks to Mark, and for myself. Good night and thank you, John, and then Mark, over to yourselves.
Well, just thanks very much everybody for joining us. Thanks again, Paul, for everything you do, and Mikey for joining us as well.
Yeah, no problem.
It's always good to have you on. So just good night, lads, and if you've not subscribed, do so and for us. Okay, God bless.